evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Once again, this evening we have two agendas we're going to be following. Our Committee of the Whole agenda, followed by our Council meeting. With that, we are going to start off with a prayer by Councillor Bill Steele. And we have a special guest this evening, Ms. Chelsea Kreitz, who's going to lead us off with the National Anthem. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lord, we ask you to watch over our deliberations this evening and allow us the ability to make thoughtful decisions on behalf of our community. We thank you for the fine weather and the bounty that you have given us. We ask these in Jesus' name. Amen. And may we just have a moment's silence for the passing of the Leader of the Official Opposition, the Honourable Jack Layton.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. And before I call upon Chelsea, I do want to make mention of the fact that this evening we have bowed our heads in prayer before our regular meeting of Council, but as well we bowed our heads in honor of the Honourable Jack Layton of the federal government's official opposition. As people have recognized by now, Mr. Layton has passed away this past morning, leaving behind both his family and a grieving nation. As you will also notice, today we have our flags at half-mast in honor of Mr. Layton, a true Canadian with a passion to make a difference, a gentleman who ensured that everyone, in fact, had a voice. And for those that knew Jack personally, as most of us have, we can also attest to the fact that he was a true friend that you can speak to, with whom, after you speak with this individual, it was like you knew him for years upon years. He was just that kind of person. His resilience and sincere nature will truly be missed as well. His knack for being there shoulder to shoulder with you, regardless of what the issue was, regardless of what party you may belong to, and sometimes even regardless of what country you may belong to. Jack was always there, shoulder to shoulder with you, side by side, to ensure that that you had help, as well as a sincere friend to rely upon when those times were in need. So with that, Councillor Steele, I do appreciate the moment of silence, and I hope we keep both Mr. Layton as well as members of his family in our thoughts and in our prayers. So with that, Chelsea, if you want to come on up and lead us off for the National Anthem, you can just go up to the podium there. And if you want to just turn on the gray button, the floor is all yours.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true Lord strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Guard, keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well done, Chelsea. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we had invited Chelsea to come on out and sing "O Canada" for us, not only for members of council, more importantly for members of the community. It is a pleasure to welcome you here to our council meeting this evening. There's no doubt that we all heard a lot about Chelsea throughout the papers, and I'm sure many of us know the Kreitz family in terms of what she's accomplished throughout the past many years. Just to give everyone some background on Chelsea, music is her life. I think we all recognize that Chelsea's consumed with her music. She's worked hard to make herself known around the community and the Niagara area, and to some extent even the province of Ontario and throughout the country, being very passionate about her music. And Chelsea has made her dreams a reality by being a musical performer. Chelsea is a self-taught guitar player and is learning other instruments to add to her resume, such as piano and drums. Chelsea is up for just about anything you're going to throw at her, and is able to and willing to work her hardest to overcome any challenges that she's faced with. In 2009, Chelsea was nominated by the Niagara Music Awards as the 2009 Rising Star, and rise she did. In 2011, after competing against 40 other contestants, Chelsea was named the winner of the 2011 Niagara Idol competition. With this, she will be performing at one of Niagara's largest events of the year. Chelsea has been to Nashville to record her new EP with Dolly Parton's management and has been noticed by Curb Records and Universal Records. She released her new single, If Your Heart's Not In It, being played on radio stations throughout our country here in Canada. In September, she'll be performing at the Canada Country Music Awards as a part of their industry showcase. And Chelsea continues playing with her band throughout Southern Ontario from Thursdays to Sundays every week at just the young age of 17. Chelsea, I am honored, I'm privileged on behalf of the entire community, all those folks watching on Cogeco land, to be here on their behalf to present you with our small token of appreciation, but a larger vote of confidence as well as support. We're all behind you regardless of where you are or where you might be performing. Always think of all of us folks in Port Colborne who are standing once again shoulder to shoulder with you. And acknowledging this certificate will do the accomplishment as the 2011 Niagara Idol. We all look forward. We all look forward to hearing more great news about your musical career, and we wish you all the best. I do have one of her CDs in my car. Her mother was kind enough to send it to me about a year and a half ago, and I do listen to it. It's an awesome CD. So for all you folks out there that are looking for a CD from Chelsea, I'm sure if you go on the internet, you can more than find the information you require. So with that, it's my honor to present to Chelsea Kreitz our congratulations on being named the winner of the 2011 Niagara Idol Contest. On behalf of each member of council, and more importantly, each and every citizen of your community, the city of Port Colborne, your dedication and commitment to your music reinforces the values evident throughout our community here in the city of Port Colborne. We wish you all the very best. Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. And Chelsea will be giving out autographs. Thanks, Chelsea. Great job. Great work. Did you want to say anything, Chelsea? Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I don't know what else to say. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Great work. No. She's shy in front of the podium, but not on stage, I know that. Thanks, Chelsea. Members of council will now move on to the introduction of any addendum items this evening. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are two items this evening. First being that the presentation regarding an update on the Port Colborne Health and Wellness Center has been withdrawn and will be rescheduled to a future meeting. In addition, the delegation listed this evening from Mr. Corey Simon has also been withdrawn at the request of the delegate to be rescheduled for September 12th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of council, I'll need a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Doucette, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? With none, items requiring a separate discussion. We have a book full of items here. Did you require any items to be lifted? I believe the clerk has told me that Ms. Dunham would like to speak this evening, or have a question at the very least, on the report that's on your agenda. So if I can have a member of council lift it, and I will ask for a motion for leave to allow for the question to come from the gallery. Councillor Butters.
Item number 1, then.
Thank you. And at the time, I will ask for leave when we do bring the item forward. With that, I don't have to ask for a motion for the, yes, I do. There's correspondence there. I'll ask for a motion to approve the remainder of the items, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I do have one presentation this evening that I'll be making from the podium with respect to the recognition of Miss Melissa Hildering for the Spring Photo Contest. She is the winner, and we have a little gift for the picture that she took. A beautiful picture, by the way, too. Members, as you recognize, every season here in the city of Port Colborne, we encourage folks to get out there with their cameras, like he is. And is that your camera? Is that the winning camera? That's the winning camera. But we encourage folks from throughout the region, but more in particular in the city of Port Colborne, to come on out and take pictures of some of the beauty that we have throughout our community. And it's always difficult because we get hundreds of pictures that come in that show everything from the waterfront to the canal to the beaches and other parts of our community, individuals, and our downtown areas. And our staff had a heck of a time trying to choose the winner, and the winner that we chose was this picture. And if the camera can zoom in here, Richard, and take a look at this picture, I'll tell you, it's the kind of picture that you can actually stare at for an hour, because there's just so much to it. It seems simple, but when you start looking at it, it's just, there's so much depth to it, as well as a story it can tell in terms of where it is, and the picture itself of the plant that was taken. So it's my pleasure to present to Melissa Hildering, right? Am I pronouncing it right? Melissa, in recognition of your achievement as winner of the Spring Has Sprung photo contest, on behalf of members of City Council and all the citizens of the City of Port Colborne, thank you for helping to celebrate the awakening of the spring season on the museum grounds here in the City of Port Colborne. And it's our pleasure not only to recognize your picture, but recognize you, recognize your camera, and also present to you a gift certificate for At 27 Restaurant. I would recommend, how old are you? Yeah, you're 24, so you're over 19 then. Okay, good. So that I can do this comfortably. I would recommend a nice bottle of red wine, okay, and a great filet mignon steak, because they probably got the best steak in the Niagara region. So by all means, go there and enjoy your night out on us, and hopefully you keep that camera close by, so we can get a whole bunch of other pictures from you in the future. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
You want to say that? You want to say that? Okay. There you go. You guys want a picture? Yeah. Okay, let's move over here. I should say one of their Canon citizen.
Pardon?
Should have said Canon cameras, and listen, this is good. Great job. Congratulations. Members, we're now going to move on to my report, and I'm just going to give you a brief report, more of an update on the most recent announcement by Provincial Health Minister Deb Matthews, who recently announced her intent to appoint a supervisor to the Niagara region. And I'm sure you read a lot about it in the paper, so I'm not going to go too much in length. But I just wanted you to know that I feel that there are still many questions that remain to be answered about what this appointment of a supervisor is meant to accomplish. It's one thing to announce that, yes, we're going to appoint a supervisor to the area, but what in fact are the supervisor's deliverables going to be? What are the terms of reference? What's the mandate? My understanding, and I don't like making assumptions, but from what I understand from talking to Queen's Park as well as some individuals from the Minister's office, is that the supervisor is to come into Niagara and literally take over the operation of the Niagara Health System as well as the NHS board activities. I think it goes without saying that this is well overdue, and we look forward to working with the individual to, in fact, move forward a lot of the healthcare initiatives that we've been working on for many years here in the city and throughout the region. I think for the most part, my opinion is that the C. diff outbreak has exposed the cracks in the system, and in fact, the reason why the health minister responded the way she did. Question is, what impacts has the change in the system contributed to this outbreak throughout Niagara? There needs to be, I think we all acknowledge, as well as we've talked about in the past, the need for best practice guidelines and principles in place to develop system-wide policies and procedures for the ability to handle infectious outbreaks such as C. diff, as well as the same for patients that may be infected as they navigate through our multi-site ER system. I think it goes without saying, and I had mentioned this a few months ago, that we need an epidemiologist at the table now, not a month from now, 6 months from now, but now, to establish those policies and procedures on infectious control. Further questions with respect to the province's agenda and therefore mandate given to the LHIN and NHS include: why is there no established funding formula for the ER UCC physicians? I mentioned this at the last council meeting. Creating an implosion comes to mind, and you can remember back in 2001 when we discussed this, and when I stated that back then, and of course it's almost like the suspicion back then is still holds true today, which is basically being set up to fail, and you can see that running on the wall, and the reason being why we're so diligent in our actions. From day one, when the HIP was, for example, introduced, and even going back to 2001 to here being in 2011. With an election around the corner, there's no question that we all as municipal councillors representing the public should ask those, and I encourage those even in the public to ask the same question. For all three leaders, what would you do? It's easy to say what you wouldn't do, but what would you do? And I think going back again to 2001, we heard the then leader of the opposition say what he would do, only to turn around and do the opposite, essentially just carrying on from what the government was doing of that day in terms of gutting our healthcare system. I expect that this supervisor will work in tandem with the tripartite committee that, as you know, I'm a part of, as well as Mayor Martin and the regional chair, to recognize the current operations within the Niagara Health System, the effects of the HIPS implementation, our community's due diligence that we've been putting forward for the last 3 to 4 years, especially with help of Joanne Ferraccioli, our healthcare coordinator, and more importantly, with the help from our medical professionals, the physicians, the nurses, and those that are in the business that helped us put together our due diligence with respect to a response to the hospital improvement plan. Recommendations, quite frankly, in fact, came from the medical community and as well the identified enablers that are actually identified within the hospital improvement plan that also put forward their concerns. And finally, I think it goes without saying, and I mentioned this to the media just last week, that a fresh set of eyes that will collect input is in fact welcomed. And that's what I expect this will be, a fresh set of eyes, not someone that's just simply going to come and propagate and or further the agenda of this current provincial government's mandate. We look forward to the next few months to build on what we have locally established, what we have regionally established, working together throughout the past many years. We have, members of council, many wins. There is no question that we have many wins, and we've been talking about that for a few years now. However, I expect to build on those positive steps that we have taken to rebuild the provision, and this is the key 2 words here, equitable access. Equitable access to health care for the residents of both Port Colborne and throughout the Niagara region. Very important. I think we are headed in the right direction now, finally, with that fresh set of eyes, with the tripartite committee, and hopefully with the work that we've done and established throughout the past many years, it will now come to the forefront and be acted upon. Lastly, members of council, we made the Home Builder magazine. We made actually the top story, which is open for business. You'll see the magazine, it says here, open for business. And in fact, within the magazine, it speaks about different communities that are in fact open for business. We have Niagara South Coast here, prominent first and foremost. And of course, the next page, it's got my ugly mug in there in terms of come on in. We are in fact open for business here in the city of Port Colborne. And it also talks about, in fairness, not only the city of Port Colborne, but cities that I, quite frankly, appreciate holding company with, that of Caledon, Guelph, Hamilton, North Bay, Ottawa, Peterborough, Pickering, Toronto, Owen Sound, Sudbury, and a few others. But the story does tell the tale of different communities throughout the province of Ontario that are, in fact, open for business. And for Port Colborne to be highlighted is a great honor, and I hope that a lot of the home builders, and I'm sure Frank, you as well, hope that a lot of the home builders start building this community to then grow what we've been trying to grow here for many years. So it's a great stuff in here, guys. Get a copy of it. There's a copy here in City Hall if you want to read it. It's at your pleasure, and hopefully what they're seeing is what others will see, and our community will benefit because of it. So, any questions, comments? Councillor Butters.
I have a question regarding the supervisor that will be appointed to take over the NHS. How soon will we be inviting that individual to Port Colborne?
As soon as possible.
Thank you.
The key, it's a few things. One is when is the individual going to be appointed? Obviously, the big question is who it's going to be. I have my suspicions. I think it's going to be somebody out of the Hamilton Health Sciences system. So it's a matter of who it's going to be, what their mandate's going to be, what their deliverables are going to be identified as by the minister's office. Then, in fact, the process of which the individual would then come in, brief themselves, and that's where I think it's going to be key. Is for all of us as a region, not just Port Colborne, not just Welland, not just St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Fort Erie, us as a region, to sit down with the individual, he or she, and really brief the individual on a lot of the things that are happening throughout the Niagara region. I think that the box has to open up when it comes to healthcare. What I mean by that is, the box that's been closed by the LHIN and by the NHS for the past 10 years, 11 years, has to be opened up. And I think everyone has to be let in the door to be a part of ensuring that we have all equitable access to healthcare. And we have to also take advantage of the quality professionals that we have out there that can contribute to achieving that. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And I'm hoping that this individual will recognize the quality that we have here throughout the region and really take full advantage of it like we had here in our small part of the world in terms of establishing, again, a proper plan for healthcare and then embark on that plan and communicating what the cost of that plan will be to Queen's Park and with the expectation that they'll follow through with satisfying the cost implications with respect to proper health care here for Niagara, not the health care we've been receiving for the past decade. Okay? Further questions or comments? With none, members, we'll now move on to the Regional Council's report. The Regional Councilor is not in attendance this evening. Any regional business I can take on? With none, we'll move on to Councilor's items, new business. I got Councilor Butters, Councilor Steele. Councilor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received this from Linda Cable, Port Colborne resident, and I'll just read it to you because it's just simpler that way. Barb, someone here has probably already mentioned this, but just in case no one has, how about a couple of not a one-horse town contests next year? Just variations on the usual business contest. Number 1, vote for your favorite horse. Of course, you'd want a lot more businesses to participate, so people had a wide variety to choose from. Entry forms could be in the stores, in the newspapers, online, perhaps. Both local people and tourists could participate. Announce the winner at Canal Days or at the end of the summer, or choose a first, second, and third. Give them prize ribbons like the big rosettes that they use in actual real horse shows. Horses wearing their ribbons are photographed with their for the local newspapers. Photographs of all the horses, put the picture in the newspapers and print entry forms. She put a lot of thought into this. Obviously, she's really gotten a great enjoyment out of the Main Street horses and would like to see that expanded into some contest stuff next year. So I would like the support of council for our staff to, maybe look into this further and get something going. She's got some good ideas here. that I think would be really give a boost to Main Street, and a lot of nice work's been done down there, so let's get more people down there and walking around. And that was part of what she says in this one here, is that, let's see, people would have to walk Main Street to identify the businesses. She's like really wanting to bring people into that core area. So I just think that, it'd be a good jumping off place if our staff could have a look at creating something for next year, working with whomever, whether it's the Chamber or the BIA or the Gateway or whoever can get on board with this to make it successful. So anyway, I would like council support and pass this on to you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Butters. And it's funny you mention that because, although that was an initiative that started out as somewhat of a protest of some of the capital work that's been done down there, I have to give a lot of credit to the BIA for really taking it and running with it to turning it into a positive. With very similar to what Buffalo did with the Buffaloes and what Toronto did with the Moose, the BIA thought in their wisdom to, hey, let's see if this thing's got, no pun intended, legs. and off they ran. They really took the reins and took control of the situation, and they literally ran with it in terms of ensuring that it became a positive, and I think it has. And I think there's a good idea here to build on that. So well stated. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before I get into what I was bringing up, it's just great to see another young person in our community recognized this evening. I mean, we've been doing that so much lately with sports teams and students of our high schools and public schools and our elementary schools. It's just good to see another facet of Port Colborne youth rising to the occasion and getting our name out there. So we thank Chelsea for that. Your Worship, I'd like to thank from yourself, the acting CAO, Chris Lee, who's here as acting director for Public Works, on behalf of the Anderson Colborne family for a great job on getting the park set for Centennial Park on Vimy Road. They had their second Nick Colborne Memorial Picnic, which raises funds to go to Lakeshore High School for a male and a female recipient each year. My middle son, Mackenzie, was worthy this year. He accepted the award, or he was given the award by the Andersons and the Colbornes. But Lloyd asked me this afternoon at a meeting to please pass on their thanks. They said the park was fantastic. The beach was great. Everything was ready to go as far as this big event, and they did raise quite a few funds. They brought in a number of volleyball teams from not just Port Colborne, but from out of town that participated in the volleyball tournament across the street. They had their dunk tank and barbecue and draws and this and that. So it was a big success. It's been 3 years since we lost Nick, and but he doesn't want to run it every year, so it's kind of every other year, just to keep the memorial scholarship going. So please pass on to our staff and our guys and gals down at the yard. Thank you very much on behalf of that family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Further new business? Councillors items. Councillor Danch.
I guess we got a couple replacements here tonight for a few of our vacationers. Chris, I got a couple for you maybe to pass on to Ron, if you could. It's basically some signage on Main Street that seems to be missing. We got a 4x4 post in front of 288 Main. There's a 4x4 there. It's been there for quite some time with nothing on it. I'm sure there's a need, or if it's not a need, let's get rid of it. The old Joey's parking lot, we've got a black post sitting up in the air there, nothing on it. Melinda's restaurant down the street there, it's kind of the same gig outside the parking area, another black post, nothing on it. Chamber of Karma's parking lot, same thing there. Seems to be maybe a little bit of repetition there, maybe something got missed in the blueprints, but if you could possibly look into that.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Lee? That's fine, Chris? Yeah, okay. Councillor Danch.
I'm going to be doing this every other week, I guess. So I guess my boater buddies have been hammering me there pretty good, and since they're buying pitchforks off me at my store, I guess the question of hand, and Peter's been very good with me and keeping in good communication, and what are we doing with the grass in the marina, and if you could just maybe tell our boater buddies that we are going to fix this for them, because boy, are they mad.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. Mr. Sinez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Danch.
Can we first of all be specific on what he's talking about?
Yeah, what Councillor Danch is speaking about is obviously the weeds in the at the marina.
Water.
The weeds under the water. It's not on the outside. We do have grass cutting, but basically there's been a high growth of weeds within the marina itself, and it has caused some areas of concern with the boaters, and rightfully so. But I guess what we want to at least make the public know and the boaters know is that we have purchased our own weed harvester machine. It arrived on last Wednesday and Thursday. We did purchase it, and training started for our staff on Friday the 19th. They started actually cutting some weeds and providing. We had trainers down from the company we purchased it from. They spent the day with our staff, with our manager or assistant manager, our maintenance person, and some of our students who was helping, taking some of the weeds off the conveyor. They did a good job in training our staff, and it continued on Saturday. And Sunday, there was the weather prohibited us from doing any weed cutting on the Sunday. They were back at it again today. Even though the winds were a little high, they were out there. So what it comes down to is that we did do some cutting. I think it's important for the boaters to know that there is a restriction on when we can start cutting weeds in the marina, and that's July 15th. We do try to get the ministry to move that back further. We can start earlier, but we have a permit from the Ministry of Natural Resources that allows us to start cutting on July 15th. We did start cutting with Marlin Marine with their services, because they had a weed cutter coming into this year. We knew that they were looking to sell the machine, but we were also hopeful that they would provide the service for the year of 2011, because we did have a meeting with them at the beginning of the year talking about the weed cutting, and at that time they didn't have any bids on their machine, and that they would provide the service to us. So we did have them between July 18th and July 22nd for that week. They were cutting. Then we came into the Canal Days week, which we weren't involved in cutting because there was a lot of traffic coming in for Canal Days. And unfortunately, as of August 1st is when we were notified that the weed cutting machine for Marlin would not be available. At that point in time, we did come directly to council then the following week when we had the August 8th meeting. And in the meantime, between knowing the fact that we may be in a bind for harvesting, we were talking with a couple companies. We were looking at, actually throughout the summer or the spring, we were looking at what our alternatives are. We looked at what it would cost to purchase a new machine, and that was basically a little cost prohibitive. It was $125,000. We knew that Marlin Marine's machine was available. Their cost was about $63,000, and we were looking at our budget, and which didn't really allow us to purchase a machine at this time. So what we've done in the past is we've usually spent about $10,000 a year on weed cutting. This year has been an especially hot summer, and July and August has seen the weeds grow rapidly, more than usual. And so what we ended up having was about a 4-week period where we weren't able to cut because we didn't have access to a machine. With that said, we were talking with the company that could either come down and do some cutting, or we look at purchasing a machine. And at the last council meeting, council approved to purchase the machine for $40,000. In doing so, the machine was tied up till August 13th, so we couldn't get it here to the following week, which it was delivered the 17th and 18th, and then we started cutting on the 19th. So we do own our own machine now. They are cutting. So we're hopeful that the priority right now for our staff is to be cutting weeds every day, and we hope that the weather will hold out for the rest of this week and they can continue to cut. They're cutting the main channels first, and then they're going to try to get into the slips and get those cut and cleared for the boaters, and then continue that process throughout the rest of the season. And what we would hope then also to do, now that we own our own machine, is that we can weed cut on an ongoing basis throughout the summer. And we're going to start actually with a late cutting in the fall to try to get the weeds out from so that in the fall season we don't have high growth that continues to start in the spring. So if we can get a good cut late in the fall, hopefully that will get us to the July 15th date, or the date that the ministry provides us, that we can go in and start cutting, and we shouldn't and hopefully won't have that problem in the future. Obviously, it all depends on weather conditions as to whether or not we can get out and do some cutting. But the other thing is the type of temperature, the type of weather we get. If we get hot weather in May, which we had a couple years ago, you could get weeds growing a lot sooner and a lot quicker. So again, it all depends on the type of weather we're getting and how soon we can get in and do the cutting. So basically what it all comes down to is we do own our own machine now. It's working well. The staff are trained and are getting used to the machine, and we should be able to get the weeds cut soon to alleviate this year's problem, and then next year and in the future we'll have our own machine to do the job.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Further questions?
No, thanks, and I'll tell my brother-in-law.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. I have a few questions with respect to the arrangement with Marlin Marine. Was there a contract with Marlin Marine, or just simply word of mouth or a handshake with respect to the expectation of them cutting the weeds throughout the 2011 season?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was no written contract. It was more of a meeting that we had in the spring.
Basically a handshake.
Yes.
I guess we'll learn there for the future. As well as there's been some word, I also have friends at the marina, and there's been a lot of word around the marina, as well as some parts of the community, as per the, I guess, an offer that Marlin had apparently made to the city with respect to their machine, or the sale of their machine. Actually, the comment that I got over the weekend was that why is the city spending $40,000 on a machine when Marlin actually offered theirs for $25,000? If you can comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when we were negotiating with Marlin, when we were purchasing the different types of equipment, which one we purchased was the lift, there was included in that offer a number of pieces of equipment and the prices, and at that time the price that was offered was that they were going to be selling the machine, the harvesting machine, at for $75,000, discounted it by about 15% for us. So the price that was offered to us was $63,750.
Okay, so it wasn't in fact offered to us for $25,000.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Sinez. Councillor Doucette.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Sinez. The late cut might be a good idea. The only concern I have with that, and I'm thinking of the lake where I go, up north, the grass usually dies back to the roots for the winter, if it's cold enough. So cutting it late won't change anything in the spring. I don't know if it would be worth having staff do that. That's something that you might have to take a look at. I mean, maybe we can try it one year and see what happens, but what I've been told from fishermen that fish in that area, there are no weeds in the winter. The weeds don't exist in there in the winter, which means it dies back down to the roots. So cutting it late in October won't make any difference for the next spring. Now, if that's wrong, then we should do it, and I agree. But I think we need to check that out, maybe with the ministry. Maybe the Ministry of Environment would know, or the Ministry of Natural Resources would know exactly what happens to the weeds over the winter. But if they do die back to the roots, cutting them late in the fall will do nothing at all for the next spring. And then that means that we may be able to save some money in one end to be able to use somewhere else. So that would be just a suggestion, because I have spoken to a few people and they didn't seem to think that that would make any difference, so.
Thank you, Councillor. And may I suggest to staff, Gary and to Peter, in particular the Marina staff, is that in the future, when we let's face it, at the end of the day, our marina is the signature of Port Colborne. It's something that, we pride ourselves to ensure that it's the best marina on the Great Lakes. And to ensure that we secure a level of service when entering into a third-party arrangement, let's ensure that that is done so on a contractual basis versus a handshake or taking somebody's word. Again, I think to ensure that our marina continues within our expectations, we also have to ensure that we secure a level of service with the third-party arrangement that's more solidified versus not, because I think this is what happened this year. I'm not going to point a finger at anybody because it is past tense, but I think we learned something from this. And I think that 3 or 4 week span between what had happened with the third-party arrangement to now, that now being buying our equipment and having it delivered, obviously created some animosity with our customers. Now, having said that, my question is to staff is, what are we going to do about that? I'm in the service business myself, and we sometimes have a challenge that might arise, and with that, there might be some consideration for some kind of compensation to the customers. So I won't put you on the spot this evening, but I would expect that something be considered with respect to some sort of compensation for what, unfortunately, although it wasn't so much our doing, it was the doing of the circumstances of the time with the arrangement we had with the third party. But still, it's our responsibility. It's our customers, and we have to make good on our reputation as the best marina on the Great Lakes. And when things like this pop up, we can't just walk away from it. We got to consider some kind of compensation for those that are spending a heck of a lot of money, not only at the marina, but also throughout our community and throughout the region of Niagara. So if I can ask staff to come up with something for the next meeting, it would be truly appreciated, I'm sure, by members of council. Okay? Okay, Peter? Great, thank you. With that, members of council, is it Councillor Butters? Go ahead.
I know I forgot this one, I'm sorry. I got a phone call this afternoon from a resident on Pinecrest Road, so this one through you to Chris. She told me that on the east side of Pinecrest, I guess the grass cutting was happening out there along the roadside, and she said it was a really lousy job on the east side, and wondered if were they coming back to kind of finish up something along there, so if our road guys could have a look. She said it was for whatever reason on the east side of Pinecrest was pretty crummy. So.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Mr. Lee?
Your worship, to Councillor Butters.
If you just press Chris, you just press the green button there.
The contractor has just submitted a request for payment saying that he's completed the job, so our staff have yet to go out and finish the final assessment of it before we release any checks. So, yeah. So we'll have a look at that first.
Hold it back until you see it. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Barb. Members of council, if there's no further new business, councillors' items, I will ask for a motion for the minutes of the 20th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated August 8, 2011. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now bring up the item for consideration. I believe it was Councillor Desmarais that lifted it. Was it you? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Butters that lifted it. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's all yours.
That Department of Engineering and Operations Engineering Division report number 2011-41, subject state of the boulevard at 730 Fielden Avenue, be approved, recommending that Mrs. Audrey Dunham, 730 Fielden Avenue, be advised that the city will continue to maintain the road and boulevards in the area of her home to current municipal maintenance standards, and that no further action be taken with regards to the roadways in the area.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Danch. Questions or comments, members of council? If I can ask a member of council to ask for leave, I believe there's a question that the resident wants to ask. Councillor Butters, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments to that?
Okay, go ahead.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? That will be carried. Councillor Butters, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say for ask of leave so that the resident can come and speak to us.
Okay. Ms. Dunham, if you want, you got a question. If you want to come up to the podium and just ask your question, yeah, the floor is yours. Welcome. If you just press the gray button there. There you go.
My question is that the boulevard is not a great standard. I have to come out every morning and clean up all the Tim Hortons cups that got full of flies in it. It's a health hazard to me.
Right.
And I can get a letter from my doctor to let you know that, because something has to be done between the schools, the parents, ourselves, that I'm not there to get up every morning and then walk to my sister's house, whose husband is, paralyzed recently in March, and also do that the other side. So my question is regarding my boulevard. By coming and putting, they write there, I'm complaining. I don't really complain. I write very polite letters and ask them, is it my responsibility to go out? Cars are parked all over around the boulevard because it doesn't belong to me. When the grass cutter comes on a certain day, there's a car parked there. How am I going to cut the grass? So I mentioned this to you, and you said, yeah, you made a mistake by taking off the grass, but the grass wasn't even looking nice. Now the boulevard is making deep marks. I'm not the only one that's called. The other two neighbors called because they were getting angry with mine being done, and their water's going, but they're the ones that park on the boulevard. Mm-hmm. So they have what kind of rights have they got if you are parking on the boulevard and destroying it? I'm not doing it. Then I have no access to my garage, and I have no access to my front door home when I have to bring any heavy furniture or something in that we buy for the children or something to store. And then having to take it out, and there's cars parked in front of the garage and in front of my home. Mm-hmm. And the road looks terrible. Now the other day they came and they put some more asphalt or whatever, but the weeds were already about, without exaggerating, about, say, 1.5 feet high, because I'm not sure of measurements, but very high. Then they came, after calling, after writing, and many letters, but not a complaint. This is a concern. And I've always told you, we need a better solution for our boulevards. There's no point in having a nice home, which I bought, that nobody bought for nearly 2 whole years. I didn't even know that, but I bought it. Had it done inside, outside, is looking great, and then I'm having all this stagnant water that's collecting, flies from the Tim Hortons cups. I asked the question, am I the one that has to go out to clean all these places? Nobody's answered me any questions.
Okay,
I know it's a difficult question.
Let's get you an answer tonight. Mr. Lee, question is, does the resident have the responsibility to go out to the boulevard to clean it up and or make it look clean in front of the residents?
Well, to answer that, Your Worship, the way the policies are now, as regards to the maintenance of those boulevards, as regards to grading, or as she refers to stagnant water, the city has a policy that when we have those instances reported, or we notice them ourselves in our road patrols, that we take care of those. As you can see by some of the attachments to the report that was written, the history goes back, and from what I recall, we stopped in 2008, which is probably coincidence to her moving into the neighborhood, but we have been constantly doing those repairs. With regards to a boulevard that is sodded, then it's the homeowner's responsibility to cut that grass if it's been sodded. With the granular, then it reverts back to our public works, and we maintain it for drainage purposes, because then it's used for parking by multiple residents within the neighborhood. So that's sort of how the policy has been in the past, and to this date, that's how we've been sort of adhering to it at Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I know it's my responsibility like everybody else. Everyone's got a curb, so nobody parks over the curb to come there. I am saying I have no access to cutting that grass. I never complained in 2007, 2008, although the people were fighting with me because I left a note on their car, I'll be most grateful. How am I going to cut the grass? I didn't say move it. Then the guy is shouting at me and telling me, you don't own this boulevard, because I left a polite note asking a question. I am not going to demand people to do things for me. Like it's written here, I'm complaining. Umpteens of time writing. I do write a hell of a lot of letters. It's traumatizing when you don't get answers. It's traumatizing.
Actually, Ms. Dunham, that's a good question in terms of a boulevard being in front of a residence. And I guess the question is twofold. Who has the right to park there? Is it the resident that is adjacent to the boulevard? And in fact...
Who robbed the churches?
Let me finish.
Sorry, I do apologize.
And as well, the second point is, who then or how do you get the grass cut if someone has a car parked there and you can't get to the grass, obviously? So, Chris, can you answer that question? The first question being, who does it belong to? It obviously belongs to the city, but if you want to park your car in front of your house and someone else is parking there that lives down the street, can they do that? And again, the second part of it is, if you can't get to the grass, how do you actually get to it, as Mrs. Dunham stated, politely?
You're correct, Your Honor. With a granular boulevard being public domain, so to speak, any neighbor within the neighborhood or any individual can come and park on that because it is public property, and hence the reason why we maintain it through public funds. When a curb and gutter and grass boulevard is installed, or if it's a grass sodded boulevard without a shoulder that they can park on, then the interpretation is that the resident is receiving the benefit of that grass in their front yard, and it's up to them to cut that. The city's not going to, because they're the sole beneficiary of that, as opposed to somebody who's parking from down the street or has company. So the dilemma then is, how do you, as you had stated, how do you stop an individual in a neighborhood from parking on the boulevard that you want to cut the grass on? Well, that's something that in the past the neighbors have gotten along and they've settled that issue between themselves, and hopefully, well, it obviously doesn't cure itself at every incident, this being the case. So I really don't know how the legal precedent would be on that. We'd have to.
Okay, so just drawing this down a bit further, there's no boulevard there, curbed and guttered, which would obviously be the responsibility of the resident. There's simply stone there with grass growing in the stone.
And weeds, lots of weeds. And I don't know how to kill the weeds with the gravel there. So I did make a mistake, like you said, about removing the grass. I would have rather preferred the grass there.
Right. And I can appreciate
it's not the neighbors that are parking there. I can't find them. It's a church, the church people. If there's a big funeral, they'll even take your front lawn and everything up. So, I mean...
So the question is that if it's not curb and gutter, and it's not the responsibility of the homeowner, it's simply stone with grass growing through it, then it ultimately falls on the city to maintain it, correct?
Correct. And that's what we've been doing on an ongoing basis with the repairs to the boulevard. Public Works crews would go in and remove the vegetation and grasses coming up and re-gravel it or re-granular surface it.
Okay, so in answer to the constituent's question then is that her expectation is that when those weeds do grow and that vegetation does come up, that the city is going to be dealing with it.
Yeah, and as we've shown in the records, we have been dealing with it on an ongoing basis since 2008. So it's just the frequency maybe is not
as satisfactory to the resident. Correct. Fair enough.
Yeah, it was satisfactory to me.
Right.
And of course, they said that I phoned in and I wasn't happy with it, because when you make a statement, it should be correct. They didn't do the part outside the garage. And like now, my second question is, how do I get access to my garage or my front entrance if there's something parked up there and I have to bring in some big item of furniture? I can't find the person who parked in front of the garage.
Well, just to clarify,
because I don't.
They're actually parking across your driveway to your garage?
Yeah. Because what happened is I don't have a car, and grass is growing right, and it's like a big house, this garage. It's not like a garage.
I've seen it,
it's like a two-storied house. So obviously, because they're saying no sort of asphalt or something, or driveway, because the driveway is the other side, so they park in front of the garage. So when you have to take in some item of furniture to store it there, to take it to Oakville, or they're going to pick it up from Oakville, we have no access to it. And my front entrance, if I don't want to take things right around, because the front side entrance that I use is narrow.
So there's, if I may, Ms. Dunham, so back to you, Chris. I'm hearing that, and I've been by the residence, it's got no driveway. There's nothing that defines the driveway, albeit there's a garage door there and a garage there. So people are tending to park in front of that grassy area
and that
would otherwise be a driveway. And
the grass is nice. They've gone and destroyed it.
Right.
And then how am I going to cut it when they're parked over there? Because they're not going to move. How am I going to knock on people's door? Is this your car? Is this your car? The
fair
grass
enough.
cutters come?
Fair enough. Mr. Lee? That sounds like a bylaw issue.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, your partner's not here today, so he can't get the, he can't get the question. You're it.
That's correct. It is a bylaw issue as to the parking. If I could make a suggestion to the homeowner that maybe if she put a small sign on a garage door saying, please don't block my driveway entrance, just so that it would designate to her fellow neighbors that it is a driveway entrance, and that would help. I would think
Okay.
a bit.
Now, otherwise, if it continues, it's simply to call bylaw up.
Correct.
Or the police?
Well,
I don't want to be involved.
I would recommend contacting the bylaw officers first, and then,
Okay.
because we do have after hours and things of that nature. So.
Okay. So a quick phone call or an email to either bylaw, but I'm sure you don't want to.
But there should be a solution. You know, I'm going to put a sign up
I'm
now.
trying to get to that, and that's what I'm trying
Right
to do
you are.
tonight. So that way,
Right you
I know
are.
how many emails you've sent, I know how many
Right, you
phone
are.
calls.
A hell of a lot, and I
So
don't want to do it.
I'm trying to come to it like a solution this evening, so you can
Right
walk out
you
and you're
are.
satisfied. So we've established the reasons of why
Right
it's
you are.
happening. We've established I guess the method of ensuring that the boulevard is being looked after in terms of aesthetics.
Right.
Now it remains as the bylaw is being there's an infraction based on the bylaw blocking public driveways. The response by our bylaw enforcement officer is imminent. We'll deal with that.
Right, yeah.
We have to know when it happens.
Sure.
So, I don't want to put on your shoulders having to look and search through
Yeah,
the
because
phone
I don't
number
like
to find
arguments with
somebody to call.
anybody.
What I would recommend you do is simply call myself, call one of your counselors, and let them deal with it. They'll call bylaw up. Bylaw will get down there and deal with it.
Like you haven't
Other
got
than that,
enough
Chris,
on his
before she
plate,
leaves
I'm going to
tonight,
call him.
possibly just give her the number for bylaw so she can just call directly. But by all means, Audrey, if you feel that you're not being looked after, just simply pick up the phone, or as you always do on the computer, send that email out
No, I have been looked after.
to myself or one of your counselors,
Yeah.
either B or Frank, and we'll deal with it immediately.
Yeah, I have been looked after because
Okay.
I did mention that after that. It was just one part of the grass wasn't done. So I've got now 2 sides asphalt and 1 side grass. Still makes the place look ugly. Doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
Well, and quite frankly, once those tickets by bylaw are given out, once, maybe twice, you can rest assured they won't be parking there again.
For the church people that come
Unless
to
it's
church.
someone different.
Because the priest doesn't allow anybody to park on his in his property. He's got 8 driveways, like
You're talking about St.
4
John
this
Bosco.
way and 4 this way. They could easily park on his driveway, but he doesn't want it in case oil goes there. But I know that for a fact. So it's fine for them to come and destroy ours, but not his church.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense either.
Members of council, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Desmarais?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mrs. Dunham. Mrs. Dunham, you may want to speak to the priest at St. John Bosco or the secretary and ask them to put it in the
I
vote.
have.
And they
And they
put
did
in the
do
vote?
it, and for a week or 2 they didn't, and then they started again. And I can understand if there's a funeral and all, you're not going to be
Right, yes.
fussy about it. Somebody's dead and you're going to make a fuss about, somebody parking outside the boulevard. That
You
doesn't
might
belong
want to
to
try
me.
just putting a please do not
Right,
park
sure.
here and block my driveway sign. That's a good idea.
Right.
Okay, so we have.
Don't know where I'm
I
gonna
think
put
we've
it.
come to 2 solutions here, Chris. Basically, one is to ensure that it's maintained, the boulevard is maintained on a continual basis. And secondly, when that does happen, Audrey, if we
Bless
can get notification of it, we can get bylaw out there, and bylaw can deal with it immediately.
Right, you. Bless you. Thanks a
Okay?
lot.
Thank
Bless
you, Audrey. Chris, thank you as well. Members of council, no further questions or comments to staff? Okay, great. Back to the report. We do have a report in front of us. It has been moved and seconded. Your pleasure to that report. All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you, members of council. We'll now move on to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? With none, if I can have a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Butters, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to our council portion of this evening's agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's one addendum item this evening, and that being the amendment to the minutes of the August 8th, 2011 council meeting, and that's for the purpose to capture a motion that was approved by council for the purchase of a weed cutter for the Sugarloaf Harbor Marina, and a copy of those revised minutes have been placed on your desks this evening.
Great, thank you, Ashley. Members of council, I will ask for a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? With none, we'll move on to a motion to adopt the minutes of the 29th meeting regular of council dated August 8th, 2011. A motion, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Are there any items requiring a separate discussion? Motion to accept the items listed on your agenda. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Steele. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I do have one proclamation this evening, members, and I will be looking for a mover and seconder. Whereas lupus is an autoimmune disease that can cause severe damage to the tissue and organs in the body, and in some cases death. And whereas more than 5 million people worldwide suffer the devastating effects of this disease, and each year over 100,000 young women, men, and children are newly diagnosed with lupus, the great majority of whom are women of childbearing age. And whereas medical research efforts into lupus and the discovery of safer, more effective treatments for lupus patients are underfunded in comparison with diseases of comparable magnitude and severity. And whereas many physicians worldwide are unaware of symptoms and the health effects of lupus, causing people with lupus to suffer for many years before they obtain a correct diagnosis and medical treatment. And whereas there is a deep unmet need worldwide to educate and support individuals and families affected by lupus. And whereas there is an urgent need to increase awareness in communities worldwide of the debilitating impact of lupus. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vance M. Badaway, proclaim October 2011 as October is Lupus Awareness Month here in the city of Port Colborne, when lupus organizations around the world call for an increase in public and private sector funding for medical research on lupus, targeted education programs for health professionals, patients, and the public, and worldwide recognition of lupus as a significant public health issue. Members of council, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Butters, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Members, I will ask if there's any notice of motion this evening. With none, Madam Clerk, if you can introduce the bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw 5686-11711, being a bylaw to close temporarily a section of Fraser Street to vehicular traffic for the purposes of the Music Depot Open House and Street Party, September 18, 2011. And bylaw 5687-11811, being a bylaw to temporarily close a section of King Street to vehicular traffic, September 17 and 18, 2011, and to repeal bylaw number 5678-10911.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of council, mover and seconder for the introduction of the bylaws, Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Danch. Questions or comments? None. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Madam Clerk, the confirmatory bylaw, please.
That the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time, and finally passed. Bylaw 5688-11911, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of Council, August 22nd, 2011.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, mover and seconder, Councillor Doucette, Councillor Steele, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I will announce our next meeting dates. We have a meeting on Monday, September 12th. Committee of the Whole and Council is beginning 6:30 p.m. here in the Chamber, as well followed by Monday, September 26th, once again here in the Chamber, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Committee of the Whole and Council. End of the summer's coming, folks, which means the start of school is coming. I know. So to all you folks, we're not going to have a meeting until September 12th. I believe that's after school starts. So I do want to give you a heads up that there's going to be a lot of kids back out in the streets, especially on those crosswalks. You know where they all are. So please ensure that you're not speeding around the city, and really pay attention to all those kids. I say it every year. Really pay attention to looking under those cars that are parked on the sides of the roads to ensure that the kids that might be beelining it outside from between some of those cars, you see those little feet and legs as you're looking under those parked cars. So just a little trick of the trade in terms of when you're driving down some of our tight streets with parking on both sides of the streets and or one side of the street. So keep an eye on the young ones while they're getting into their first days of school and throughout the school year. As well, most of you will be watching this tomorrow evening, which is on Tuesday evening. There is going to be the Every Kid in Our Community event happening over on the east side, down by the park, East Village Park, Victoria Playground, as well as an open house is going to be hosted by the Ontario Health Coalition over at the Legion, beginning at, I believe, 6:30. So for all you folks that are watching this, turn the TV off and shoot over to Legion or shoot over to the East Village and have some fun with your community, whether it be with the kids over with Every Kid in Our Community, or with trying to accept some input about our healthcare system over at the Legion. Other than that, please enjoy the rest of your summer, members of council. I know some of you might be going on vacation in the next couple of weeks. Enjoy it. And to all of you, enjoy the rest of the summer. We'll see you back here in September. With no further business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Enjoy your summer. I adjourn.